What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Field Stormers. As always, I am your host, Mo Murphy, with my co-host Walker Bailey in the building. Walker, what's going on, bro?
Not much, man. Not much. Just I know it's been a while since we've been in. Just so much life got in the way, but glad to be back.
Yeah, 100%. We weren't able to recap week 4, which was really going to be one of our better shows when you really think about it. But at the end of the day, we also could have been part of that crowd that would have overhyped week 4. And week 4, kind of the inevitable that was going to happen with some of those games happen. So that was also a possibility. And that kind of did happen. Oregon manhandling Colorado happened. That would have been an expectation from both of us on the show. I picked Ole Miss to beat Bama. Didn't happen. Obviously, I was going to rock with Ohio State over Notre Dame just because I'm an Ohio State fan, not going against my guys. Got lucky there, last second touchdown to be able to win the game, fight another day. Before we kind of get into anything, I just want to ask, like, the one question that kind of took the airwaves on Monday was like, bro, did you have a huge problem with Ryan Day calling out Lou Holtz after the game?
I just thought it was really corny, man. Like the dude was definitely asleep and is like 88 years old. And like, I know he coached both places, so like he probably shouldn't have said what he said. But like, I mean, he'll always be remembered for coaching at Notre Dame. Like he was just there firing up the crowd. Like I don't know that Lou Holtz even believed what he was actually saying. Like, and then Ryan Day like wins probably like it's definitely not the biggest game of his career or anything, but it's like he got a really big win for the 2023 team on the road. And he's like, you know what? Basically walks on, he's like, you know what, man? Fuck Lou Holtz. And it was just like, was that really? I'll say this. I had as much of a problem with that as I did the Washington State guy calling out Lee Corso. Like,
yeah, okay, yeah. And it's because those guys are getting old, clearly.
I will say this. Actually, I take that back. I give Washington State more of a pass because I understand why they're frustrated. Like, they're getting left behind. They're basically becoming a group of 5 school, and they don't really have much they can do about it. And, like, they're getting mocked on ESPN for it. So, like, it's legitimately potentially, like, an athletic department destroying thing that's going, and, like, ESPN's cracking jokes about it. So I get why they're upset. Ryan Day was just like, no, you know what? You called us soft.
The thing is, though, the only thing is, I mean, I understand, Lou Holtz is old. My only thing was I just love to see him fired up. Like, maybe not bring up Lou Holtz and just kind of, you could have took subtle jabs, like not just flat out, this is directly who I'm talking to, because let's be honest here, Lou Holtz isn't the only person to say it. There's plenty of people that have acknowledged that under Ryan Day since taking over 2019, these Ohio State teams have gotten more talented on the skill positions and less physical. And that's not necessarily what you're opposed. Like, they've become more talented on the offensive side and less physical and less talented on the defensive side since 2019. Look at that 2019 secondary and before, like when he first took over, and look at that secondary before that. I mean, when you're talking about name for name, you talking about some of the best secondaries of recent memory. When you just talk about who was back there at corner and safety, there was a point in time where we had like 7 guys in the secondary. All are starters currently in the NFL right now. Like that was we had a defensive end who got paid. We had another defensive end who isn't necessarily get paid, but injuries, but a top 5 pick in the draft. Like, we've got productive linebackers in like Pete Warner. We got another edge rusher in what's his name? Sam Hubbard. That's playing for the Bengals. Like, so you see all these guys, and it's like they kind of these are guys who were recruited by Urban Meyer, and I think maybe 1 or 2 of them, was passed to Ryan Day for his last couple of years, but they just haven't been tough. In the games they've lost, they've been out physical. Nobody's outperformed them skill position for skill position. They beat them in the trenches. They ran the ball. They stopped them from running. Like, that's when they lose those games outside of Georgia, who really beat them in a shootout, touchdown for touchdown, came back, whatever. Nobody's beat them in a way that Ohio State should be beat, essentially. You shouldn't be out there getting out physical. You're one of the most talented teams. So it was rightful criticism. So I don't think Lou Holtz was wrong. And Ryan Day does have to win these big games, because losing to Michigan twice, losing to Georgia, granted, I don't think that was his fault. I mean, somebody had to win, somebody had to lose that game. Those were 2 really talented teams going at it. You lose by 1 point at the strike of midnight, bro. Like, You know, because do you say the same thing about Georgia if they lose that game in Ohio State? Like, you're not saying the same thing about the Georgia head coach because, bro, when you play that close of a game, somebody got to win, somebody got to lose. But I just love to see him be that fired up. But my thing is, like, okay, we got a bye week. Like, can you keep that same edge the week after? And can you keep that same edge coming home, playing at home, playing against Penn State? Like, we need you in those games as well because you still got 2 more games on your schedule right now with a possibility of losing. Like, you're not going to be highly favored. You may walk into the big house not favored at all. You might be the underdog. It ain't going to be disrespectful, so don't paint the picture to your guys that you are being disrespected by not being the favorite going into the big house.
You can't. Yeah, you can't argue. You can't argue that you should be the favorite when the other team has gone to the playoff now 2 straight years and has also beaten you in the process to get to that place. Like, and you're going to their place. Like, at some point, it's like, hey, like, we've got to step up and beat them because they've kind of claimed the Big Ten throne at this point. Like, it's theirs until somebody comes and takes it, and whether that's Penn State or Ohio State, somebody's got to come back and get it.
Yeah, 100%. And that's how it goes because it's always been Ohio State's crown, and you got to come get it. And every once in a while, the team will come get it. But
while we're on coaches yelling things, let's just go ahead and get this out of the way. Just because I don't know why it's been controversial, but people have been upset about it. Did you have any problem with Dan Lanning's pregame stuff?
No.
I don't know why people are so upset about it.
Okay, slightly. Not the outrage, but I get what he's saying, but I don't like the fact that literally, bro, when we really think of it in the grand scheme of things, if there is one school that literally sells their product of come play for us for clicks, hey, we got the coolest jerseys, we got the best facilities, like we don't really win shit. We went to the playoffs and got smacked before. We don't necessarily walk out of here winning the Pac-12, but we got the best jersey combinations. We got the hardest release of jerseys and cleats and gear. Like, that's what you sell, bro. That's essentially for clicks. You play towards the social media and getting guys that way. It ain't all about the football program. Oregon's good. Now, don't get me wrong. They won the Pac-12 sometimes just recently. Shoot, they won, 2 of the past 3 years or something like that, 2 of the past 4. So, like, they do win, but, like, they're playing for clicks. We're playing for wins. Like, Oregon is known for the brand of, like, they get all the cool Nike shit. And now you're telling me that, like, oh, they're not the ones that play for clicks, essentially. But a lot of the other stuff I didn't have. It was just that one line, like, oh, yeah, the coach of Oregon sells his brand.
I feel like that, like, not that specific line, but just stuff like that gets said every single week. The difference is that ABC's cameras were in the locker room.
And he knew that. Like, my thing was he knew that. I don't think his speeches are always like that. I don't think he's that animated. And even after the game, now I had no problem with what he said after the game, but the type of what he was excited about was he was like, I have a damn good team. Here's my thing. I think Dan Lanning thinks he got a team that could play in the playoffs and possibly compete for a national championship. And I think he's probably one of 8 or 9 coaches realistically. Like, some coaches know, like, yeah, we would love to, but they get their swagger gets a little different. Their swagger gets a little different, a la James Franklin, when they really feel like they got a team that can win. And I think what Dan Lanning was excited about was Oregon. A lot of times they do play at that 3:30 slot, but they also get left out because they'll play that late game, or they'll play the Pac-12 after dark, or they'll play on Friday night. And you're not just as good as we know Oregon is. Sometimes they surprise you by week 8 when they're undefeated playing in a huge matchup against Utah or USC, because you're like, oh, damn, I ain't even really heard about Oregon like that because I ain't really watch them like that. So for him to get one of the most watched games in college football, of the season, you kind of knew this Colorado game was going to be one of the most watched games. He was a little bit excited about, hey, y'all get to see what my team looked like. And I really think, hey, the conversation about my team going to be different, which is okay.
I do think that's more what upset him. I think he was more like, I can't remember how many games they won last year, which I guess is probably part of his point. But, I mean, like, he's kind of like got like a machine running there as far as Pac-12 football goes. I mean, they're really, really good. They had everybody coming back. And somehow, it's all about USC. It's all about Colorado. It's all this stuff. Like, and that's the whole, like, they went 10-3 last year, 7-2 in the conference, 5-1 at home, 4-1 on the road. Like, they were good last year, and they brought everybody back, and they added some guys, and so they were this really, really high profile team. And yet, like, you've got this team who, and this is not Colorado's fault at all. You've got this team who went 1-11 last year. Like, they beat TCU on the road in week one, but beyond that, like and then they beat two what we would describe as pretty bad teams at this point. Even though I'm a Nebraska guy, um, and I think he was more like, we're playing a game in our home stadium, and they're coming here, and they really have proven next to nothing, and nobody's talking about us. It's all about them.
But
Like,
the thing is, bro, see, here's my thing is being his age. He's a young coach for a college coach, but like he's what, early 40s? Probably he look about 40 something.
He's Nick Saban's successor eventually.
Young coach, right? But come on, dog. Don't act like you don't know who the head coach over there at Colorado is. Like, yeah, I get it. You're what about us? But like, come on, bro. Like you just watched the last year, like Deion had everybody watching HBCU football. And I don't mean everybody around the country, but you know what I mean? Like the spotlight was on it. Jackson State was the most highest rated, like FBS, like Power 5 school to watch all year long. Like their game, you kept up with Jackson State. Like, bro, it's Deion. Deion's always been like that. He's always been must-see TV on the field, on the diamond in baseball. Like he's always been this polarizing figure. So it's not even as much about like the polarization around Colorado obviously is because of who their head coach is. But even them being 3-0 was at that point, nobody thought, I know they beat TCU. I know they beat Nebraska and I know they beat Colorado State. But like in a sense, like had they lost to TCU, nobody was going to give them a real chance against Nebraska. Think about it. Before they beat TCU, they was underdogs to play against Nebraska. Like this is a team they thought might be sitting at 0-3, nothing special. They're just loud. They're playing for clicks at that point, and that's all it is because Deion's still gonna preach. And they start 3-0, and like the narrative changes now. If you really know college football, and that's what separates this season, is if you really know college football, you knew that end result on Saturday. You pretty much knew that was gonna happen. Like what happened on Saturday was the inevitable, but there's so many people who are now talking college football, embracing college football talk that really don't know nothing about the sport, don't really keep up with it. It's an afterthought. They know the big brands, the big games, and that's about it. But they don't know who is Dan Lanning for real because they know about the brand Oregon and, they got the cool jerseys. Probably don't know their coach. Know their quarterback, maybe. But they don't know a lot of guys on Oregon. So at the same time, it's like, bro, it's just that's what comes with, it's the prime effect. Like the prime effect is real because – and I think like the prime effect, and I know you might disagree, but listen to where I'm coming from. I think the numbers for that Ohio State Notre Dame game had everything to do with who played before them I think them having, I know that was going to be a big game, but Ohio State Notre Dame like peaking at like damn near 11 million at any point. Like, yes, it had the possibility to do that, but I think like playing right after Oregon and Colorado, which even when Colorado was getting blown out, that's the difference. Everybody's still commenting on this game. Somebody like me, bro, I turned the Oregon game off. I'm fit to watch Bama and Ole Miss. Let me go watch some of these other games. This game over. I already know the result, but you got social media and everybody still defending Colorado, defending Oregon, talking about Deion, talking positive and negative. Like, that game held traction through 4 quarters, and it was a blowout. Oregon never gets to hold traction ever again in a game like that. It just wouldn't happen if it wasn't Colorado.
I just didn't take it as shots at Deion, and I think that's why after the game, like he kind of clarified because I think he realized what he had said and it was going to get taken a certain type of way.
I don't think it was shots at Deion either. Like, what is Colorado?
But people, I know, yeah, it's just like. I think he was just motivating players, and then he came back and he was like, yeah, like it's pretty obvious that he's building something over there. Like, I wish him the best of luck. Like, I mean, today was about winning today and this, that, and the other, and all the coach beat.
And when 2023 and those comments get made to a black and white thing as well. And so, that sparks the whole other conversation.
What drove me nuts, and I'll literally single a person out here. What drove me nuts was the Josina Anderson tweet where she was like, oh, yeah, well, does he give that pregame speech if Travis Hunter's in pads? And I was like, yes.
Oh,
yeah.
Like, yes.
Yes. Yeah, I was like, it may have been 42-13 instead of 42-6. Like that wasn't changing.
Thought they were like, I don't think Dan Lanning thought they were Travis Hunter injury away.
I told everyone who would listen, I said, you don't like and we'll get to this later because Lane Kiffin did some of the same stuff, but like Dan Lanning said everything he said over the course of the summer and this week and in pregame because he knew what the end result was going to be and that he wasn't going to have to eat the words. Like he knew he knew what the result was going to be. He had turned on the film. He knew they were going to win and he knew they were going to win big. And so he could say whatever he wanted because he knew they weren't going to lose. And so, yeah, that's where it is.
Confidence as well. Like, there's nothing wrong with being a college.
Nah, because you know what? No, because you know,
having that kind of confidence
again. And this is where I come back to it. It's like, you know, like all the same people who are really mad at Dan Lanning for that were the people who ate it up when Prime walks into TCU talking about, oh yeah, well we're here. Like, you know, this is our time now. Like all that stuff where he's motivating his players. Like, you know, talking about this, that, and the other, and then they go and win the game, and it's awesome. Well, I mean, it was basically the same thing. Like, Colorado's become very polarizing, which I don't really like, to be honest. Like, I want to just like be able to watch them. I know that they're not going to be just any other team, but like I would like to watch them as like an up and coming rising program,
up and coming team, and see what they really like.
Like,
what is he really?
Yes, I'd like to be able to analyze them without being on one side or the other, where it's a good versus a bad thing. Like, there's people that think Colorado's winning 9 games still this year, and it's not happening. Like, that's just not in the cards. Like, they're not going to beat USC. They've still got USC, UCLA, I think, Utah, and Washington still on the schedule. Like, they're not beating any of those teams. Like,
well,
they're just not good.
Since you bring up USC, and we are talking about Week 5, that is going to be the primetime game of the noon kickoff. USC versus Colorado in Boulder.
Yeah. We'll get to it in a minute. Let me finish what I was saying.
Okay, go ahead.
But what I was saying is, like, I think the problem with the people who are analyzing Colorado, not Colorado. This is, I mean, they can't control what people say. People don't understand how hard it is to program build in this sport. Like 1-1 and I said this the other day. I've said it on this podcast too. Like 1-1 to 6-6, or 1-11 to 6-6 is like national coach of the year type stuff. Like, yeah, he would deserve, and he would literally deserve. Yeah, and I've said it since the moment he got hired. Like, it would be legitimately, it would be like mind-boggling how they were able to do that. So, like, don't set them up for failure by saying like, oh, well, this team can win 8 games, they can win 9 games. Well, no, they can't. Like, they can't do that, and that's okay. But like, we need to accept that that's okay. Like, that's not a problem. Like, he's not failing by not winning 8 or 9 games this year. He's actually massively succeeding by winning 4 games. Like 4-8 would have been a massive
3-1. Like, just sitting at 3-1 right now is already. I beat the expectations because you started off the season 3-0. You started off. You got your team in the rankings. Like,
I've already 4-8 would have been a massive success. Like, it still would be, and who knows? Like, that's still on the table. Like, I'm not predicting them to go 4-8, just to clear the things up for people who get their feelings hurt. But like, I'm not predicting them to go 4-8, but like, you know, if for some reason they lost to Arizona State, beat Stanford, and then lost every game on the rest of their schedule and finished 4-8,
it's not out the cards.
That would still be a huge success. Like, it's like, hey, we got 3 wins better in year 1 just by me showing up. I haven't even had a full off season yet, and we're already 3 wins better now. Now show up. Like, you know, like, I don't know. I think it's got blown out of proportion. I do think they will play better this Saturday. I think it's a better matchup for them. I think they'll score some points. Like, they can't win the game. They're not going to win the game. Because USC is going to score every drive.
I think 42-28 repeat score of what USC did with Arizona State is in the cards. Like, I think they could. You never really thought Colorado wins the game, but I mean. Now, I think I'd feel more strongly about that if Travis Hunter played. But USC's defense is absolutely horrible. Like, if we're being honest, they let Arizona State, who, I'm sorry, just the previous week had like 0 points, 8 turnovers. Like, look, absolutely terrible offensively, starting a freshman quarterback who has had flashes of good. And I think by year 2 or year 3, that kid's going to be pretty good. I also don't think he'll be in an Arizona State uniform by year 2 or year 3. I'd be surprised if he's there year 2. Definitely by year 3. He's the guy who's going to come to national championship contender looking for a quarterback out the portal, and they go get Jaden Rashada because he is uberly talented at flashes.
I think this is like a 56-38 final.
I could take that though. That's still, I think that's an indictment on USC if that game goes that way. If they win 56-38, like
listen,
USC a little different.
Listen, and this is a conversation we'll have down the road because I think the L's are coming for USC. Like, I think they're coming at some point, and like, I just don't think they're very. Like, I mean, well, whoa. I don't think they're a national
Yeah, you
championship
gotta watch your
playoff
words
team.
nowadays.
I was about to say,
you're
I don't think they're very good, but like that's relative to what they were a year ago almost is kind of what I was thinking in my head. But some people don't have the nuance to think that way. Like I think that they're like legitimately probably maybe the fourth best team in the Pac-12, maybe fifth.
Washington.
I mean, think about it.
Utah, Oregon?
Washington and Oregon for sure are clear. You could argue Utah for sure. They're elite defensively, all that good stuff. And I think too, there's an argument to be made at this point. And granted, this is where you're reaching. If you wanted to drop them all the way to 5 and put Washington State ahead of them for now, I'd kind of be like, okay, I understand. I don't agree, but I understand. Like they have a win over Wisconsin, and then they just beat Oregon State last week. Like they've already beat 2 top 25 teams this year.
Yeah.
Like
who's that? And Oregon State's a good football team, actually.
Yeah. And the Wisconsin game wasn't that particularly close.
No, it
like
wasn't.
I know the final was 31. The final was 31-22, but it never felt that close.
No,
and the Oregon State game wasn't close either. Like the final was 38-35, but they were up like 38-17 with like 4 minutes to go. They just gave up a bunch of garbage time points. They were never in danger of losing.
That's always, especially when you know you can score at will against a good Oregon State defense. And that's another big game this weekend. Oregon State got Utah on Friday night. Like we get us a treat for a Friday night football game.
I like the Beavers. Lay the points, take the Beavers. I think the Beavers get it done. I still think they're coming back yet? I don't know. It doesn't matter. I'd take Oregon State either way.
But like, I just think we're in like for that to be a Friday night game, and then it's a 9:00 kickoff Eastern. So it is one of those. It's late, but it is one of those like, hey, bro, if I ain't got too much going on Friday night, I can watch some.
I won't get to watch it, but
I'm watching the game. Like I know
I won't get to watch it, but I'll be scoreboard watching. Like I will be paying attention to kind of the game flow and stuff, and we'll probably maybe go back and watch it like Saturday morning before the game start or something. Like record it and go back and watch it.
I think that game's interesting. It's definitely worth watching on a Friday night if you're at home doing nothing.
But I said this on the pod. I said this on the pod last week. And I said it to a lot of people. I thought that was one of the games beyond Ole Miss, Alabama, and then, I mean, really just that one. Like that was Oregon State, Washington State was like one of the games I was really pumped up to watch because I thought that was 2 teams who had Pac-12 championship potential squaring off.
I'm pissed off.
They were 2 under the radar teams.
Pac-12 after dark. That's why I'm pissed off. I'm mad they weren't Pac-12 after dark. Y'all had to play because I wanted to watch that game. Y'all had to play at the same time as Ohio State, Notre Dame, knowing damn well I ain't turning that game on at that time. Like that pissed me off.
And then also at the same time as the whiteout at Penn State, where like I don't know, like you had a lot of really tough TV like competition there for that game. I wish they would have played it like 8:30 or something, like played it late, 9:15, something like that. But it is what it is. I do think that game Friday night will be really good. I don't think it matters. I mean, like Rising, even if he's practicing this week, he hasn't played a competitive football game since last season. I think it's tough to ask him to come into game 1 and immediately just be a dude again. Like it's going to take a second. And so I don't think you're getting like A+, like, just total baller Cam Rising right out the gate.
This is still an upgrade of what you've had at quarterback up to this point.
It is. Okay. It is. But I still think like, people don't understand, man. Like Oregon State is an absolute wagon in Corvallis. I saw the stats today. They're 13-1 straight up and 13-1 against the spread in Corvallis under this current head coach. Under Jonathan Smith.
Yeah, they have that's where they beat.
They don't lose
last year. Covered the spread, all that. Like that is one of those.
The one loss ATS and straight up was against USC last year when they lost like 14-7, and it was like kind of a fluky game. They turned it over in the red zone like 3 times, if I remember right. Like they easily could have won the game. They just kind of stuff didn't break their way. It was one of those games. Like, but they don't lose in Corvallis. Like that's just one of those things, and it's one of the few Pac-12 opponents for Utah that will actually be able to match their physicality and their level of defense.
So let me ask you this is, okay, we know we'll talk about your team in a second. And just we'll talk about their matchup this week. Outside of your team, which is game day. No, game day's in freaking Duke.
It's in but hey, they've earned it. Give it to them. They've earned it. Duke's earned it. Hadn't lost a football game, and they're legit good.
This is why I'm pissed off that Ole Miss didn't win that game, because we knew where it was going to be had they won that game. But when we went,
I'll go ahead and tell you, Duke's going to win this weekend. They're going to win. Notre Dame is going to do what I call losing the Ohio State game twice, because you lose such an emotional game like that, and then you have to try to get back up emotionally and go play on the road.
And convince yourself that you have a chance of winning the playoffs, when really, because and don't have a conference championship, it might have went out the window. But if you wanted to right the ship, it would be now. Like if you wanted,
and one of the most under the radar draft quarterback guys is Riley Leonard at Duke. Like he does a lot of good stuff. Like he's gonna, and he'll be a first round guy by the end of the year.
He's nice. He's nice. Yeah,
he's good, and he's good. And people don't talk enough about the job that Mike Elko is doing at Duke. People don't understand. Like Duke is in the class of like Vanderbilt, Stanford, all those academic schools that you think of, Notre Dame, where it is insanely hard to win, because like you don't recruit on an even playing field, because you have to recruit like these guys that can also qualify academically into that school. So you can't just go recruit whoever you want to recruit. And he's somehow like, they went 9-4 last year, and now they're undefeated. Notre Dame's coming, and they have College Game Day on Duke's campus. Duke. And he's in year two.
The Cameron Crazy's finna be out for that game. They finna leave Harwood and go to the field, dog.
It's year 2 for Mike Elko. Like
the Cameron Crazy's finna leave Harwood and get out there on that field.
I know, and he's already won, and he's already beat Clemson, who has been like the ACC's powerhouse. He already beat Clemson convincingly at home.
Exists still because of what Clemson has done the past few years. They probably would have been.
I'm telling you, man. Like I'm telling you, I like Duke. I like Duke at home. I think Notre Dame is going to lose the Ohio State game twice. I think they just kind of lay an egg and have a really subpar effort, and Duke wins that game. And all of a sudden, then we're like, wow, can Duke win the ACC title?
So is that like your game of the week? Like, is that like outside of your team?
Let me double check. It's definitely up there.
I know my game, and it's really, in my opinion, just loving college football. Like the game of the week that I really want to watch and I think is going to be a dogfight is y'all versus Ole Miss. I mean, y'all versus LSU. I'm 100% looking forward to that game. I love the fact that it's a 5:00 kickoff for us Central Time, so it won't run up too late. But I'm gonna be honest, bro. Kansas and Texas, I think that got some steam. Kansas undefeated, Texas undefeated, but here's the thing:
this is the opposite.
Texas like to fumble these games and play either one extremely close. And if you play it extremely close, this Kansas offense is very fast. This team is very fast. And so if Texas goes in there and tries to out finesse Kansas, I think they could lose. Now, if they go in there and they played against Bama and let's just be more physical, I think they win the game, and they win the game.
I think they're gonna. I
think they're gonna. What they decide to pick and play could determine the outcome of this game.
I think they're gonna. I think they may whack. I think they're gonna wax Kansas. Like I think it's like a.
I think I'm falling into the hype.
No, it's not. It's not that. It has nothing to do with Kansas. I just think Texas is that good, and this is an opportunity off the Bama win, like from a couple weeks ago, where they haven't really come back and played like that level of football again. Kansas is getting a ton of national love, and rightfully so. Like doing a great job. You're a much more talented team. You're playing at home. Like this is a chance to go drop the hammer and like kind of not right the ship, but just like, hey, let's go back and play a really high level football game.
And this might be one last week. This might be the game and like watching at that time. We didn't
play super high level against Baylor. Like we definitely didn't play very high level against Wyoming. Like this is the game where we come back, we drop the hammer, and we blow Kansas out and remind everybody that the Big 12 runs through Austin. Like I think that's kind of. Now, granted, if that's not that type of game, then it's going to be like they might lose. Like, there's no in between. Texas doesn't win this game by 10. Like, Texas either wins this game by 21 or we're in this thing at the end and somebody's like kicking a field goal for a chance to win it or something. Like, it's going to be, I think it's either going to be super tight or Texas is going to just wax them.
Right. I think so. All right. So we'll talk about LSU Ole Miss because I actually have a question to close it out on of conversation. We'll close this show out on this, but we'll talk about LSU versus Ole Miss. I think this is the game that's going to be – I'm on the outside looking in, so I'll give my outside opinion before we give it to you on your inside opinion. I think this game is going to be very telling. This game determines both teams' rest of the season. At the end of the day, I don't think that's a bold take. I think that's a very obvious thing to say. One of these teams are going to have 2 losses, but I think a loss for LSU is worse than a loss for Ole Miss. I think if LSU loses, I think they came into the season obviously considered a better team, more hyped team. Then you probably don't have the better quarterback right now. It's probably maybe a toss-up, you preference, but I think like LSU needs to take advantage of beating Ole Miss after coming off a loss against Alabama. Like you need to bank on the fact that Ole Miss is not going to be kind of like the Notre Dame thing. Like you need to bank on the fact that Ole Miss might not be able to recover from that heartbreak and lose back to back. I know it's going to be hard in Oxford. I think it'd be a lot easier said if it was in Death Valley and they were at home than as opposed to going on the road at night in Oxford. Like I understand that setting. But I think a loss for LSU is way more devastating than a loss for Ole Miss.
I think that's probably true. Like I think a lot of the Ole Miss people, just because of the schedule where you had to play LSU at home, where you got LSU at home, but you had to go to Tuscaloosa, you had to go to Athens. Like I think a lot of people were like, hey, like let's just hang out. Let's try to go 8-4, 9-3 this year. And then next year when we don't have to play all those tough games, like that's the year we go. Because like that's Judkins junior year, that's Dart's junior year, where you've got all these dudes back for their last run and like all these veteran dudes, and you're also recruiting more talent in where that's where all your depth comes from and stuff. Like I think that it's always been an eye on 24 for Ole Miss. Like, and that's not me punting this season. That's just I do think that's the long game plan. With that being said, I guarantee you Ole Miss wins on Saturday.
How bad? Like bad or just guaranteed?
No, it's a close game. It's like a 42-38 final. I think this thing's a shootout, and I'm almost certain Ole Miss wins.
I'm gonna go against you just because I don't want to see your happiness. Especially I'm on a bye week, so I'm on hate week.
Yeah,
like I'm hating on everybody. I want everybody team, everybody who loves somebody. I want them to lose. I want Texas. I want who else? I want to lose. I want Texas to lose. I want USC to lose. I want Ole Miss to lose because of you. I want Bama to lose just because. Why not? Fun for Bama to still be in September and have 2 losses. Great story.
Right, well, I'm gonna spoil it.
That's not gonna happen
for you. I was gonna say I'm gonna spoil it for you, and for someone who's not an SEC historian, I don't think State has scored a touchdown against Alabama in like 6 years, and I'm not exaggerating.
Bama's legitimately not losing this game, bro.
I'm being dead serious. Like I think that they've either shut them out or held them to a field goal for 6 straight years or something. It's been awful.
Yeah, this game's been horrible. Like Bama's realistically gonna beat the brakes off of them. It would just be on the hate level of like anybody who I know. And then like out of LSU and Ole Miss, like my homeboy LSU fan. So I just got to pick who would be more fun to talk shit to. And even though if y'all lost y'all second game, you probably wouldn't be that fun because then you're just going to be the realistic outlook of what Ole Miss season looks like and the expectations.
I'm going to do that. I'm going to do that if they win anyway, though. Like I'm kind of the same all the time. Like it's kind of unfortunate, really. But so Mississippi State hasn't scored a touchdown against Alabama since 2019, where they lost 38-7. They got shut out in 2020. They got shut out in 2020. They kicked 3 field goals in 2021, and they kicked 2 field goals last year. And Alabama in those games scored 38, 41, 49, and 30. None of those games have been close.
This game's not going to be close. I mean, I don't expect
close. And then the last time they had like a legit good scoring effort against them was in 2017, where they lost 31-24. But the year before that, they got beat 51-3, and the year before that, they got beat 31-6. They literally never play this game close.
Well, before I get to the last like question and you weigh in on it, I got one more, not necessarily question, but okay, Bama doesn't have a good quarterback this year, right? Like we all can see that, agree with that. Can people stop acting like that is an excuse for Nick Saban? And I'm going to tell you why. Because yes, in recent memory, you remember how good Mac Jones was. Look at the weapons he had. I mean, who couldn't be that good throwing to who he was throwing to? But that's besides the point. Mac Jones was really good. Tua was really good. Hurts was above average. He was more than serviceable. He was able to win games with as talented as that team is. But like Saban has been winning for so long. We are not going to act like this man ain't have an opportunity to win a national championship with Blake Sims. We're not going to act like this man ain't have an opportunity to win a national championship. I think he did win a national championship with Jake Coker. Like, this dude has done it without good quarterbacks. Like, I think the whole he doesn't have a quarterback thing as an excuse for Saban, I think is weak. And he would agree. Like, Saban has not used an excuse of me lacking at quarterback why they lost to Texas or why, he's referenced it. Obviously, he gets asked about it, but he's never said, like, yeah, if we were better at quarterback, we'd be a way better football team. Like, he's not on that level. He still has the expectations of, I don't care who the quarterback is. I just think at a talent level right now, Bama's just not more talented than everybody everywhere else. And it's not just the quarterback problem. It's the fact we're so used to them typically being more talented than almost everybody else. And now when I say middle of the pack, I'm talking about top 15 teams. They're in the middle of the pack of the top 15 teams. They're somewhere in that 8 and 15. And like, I think like 8 is what Oregon right now. So I do think Oregon is better, but I'm just saying they float around in that they're middle of the pack as far as talent goes from top to bottom. They don't have a bunch of standout talent, but they got some. They got some guys on this roster that's going to go to the NFL. I just get tired of the, like, okay, this year he don't have a quarterback. What do you expect him to do? Like, this dude has won national championships with mid to bad quarterbacks plenty of times before, but that was usually when those rosters were just so much more talented than everybody. He had 10 first-round picks over the next 2 years on those rosters. Not his fault. Everybody has a down recruiting year. Let's be honest. Like, everybody misses on some talent. It is here or there. I don't think Nick Saban is I don't think Nick Saban's career is done or anything like that. But I just wanted to say that. So my question is this. I said this the week before that I'm starting to get convinced of what I'm about to say. And then last week solidified how I feel through 4 weeks of college football. Now, we only in the first month. I'm not predicting these two teams to be in the national championship. Now, I'll tell you, if they were in the national championship, I would not be surprised. But I almost think it's not close. I think the two best teams in college football through the first month, my 1 and 2 is Washington and Penn State. Am I crazy?
No, I mean, I think there's arguments for other people, but I mean, I don't think you're insane.
Arguments for other people. I just think for the first, and people, I've told some of my homeboys this. They're like, bro, I think that's a hot take. Like, I think that's bold. I don't think nobody would agree with you, but I'm like, if I look at it, especially one, I'm going to give them a little more of the upper hand based on expectation. We thought Georgia was about to look like world beaters. They could just literally march on through the season because they are that much better than everybody. I'm just saying they don't look like world beaters right now. They still very well could be the best team in the country. I know they don't have a strong schedule. I know they can sleepwalk through pretty much their entire schedule. I understand that. But at the same time, I'm watching Michael Penix Jr., best quarterback in college football right now. I understand Caleb Williams is absolutely elite. This man got they played the same amount of games. This man got 400 more pass yards. This man got more touchdowns. Caleb Williams is the better draft prospect. Caleb Williams goes number 1 if the draft starts today. Michael Penix Jr. is the best quarterback in college football right now. Drew Allar is the guy Penn State has been looking for. They've always had good talent at receivers. They've always had elite running backs. They've always had a damn good defense with a couple first-round picks on their defense. They've had everything in place, and then they've had, what's his name? Sean Clifford has been the quarterback that's supposed to bring it home for them. Now they got a guy who looks like he can bring it home. By the time he's a junior, which is what, next year? By the time next year, you talking about he one of the top 3 draft prospects more than likely. Maybe he stays another year. I don't see it. 2 years of starting. I think he has his breakout, really elite year, becomes a top 10 pick just for the sake of argument. If I don't know who after next season will need a quarterback, but I think he could be a top 10 pick, a top 3 quarterback in the draft. Going into next year. And Penn State has always been, they've been that team that's the definition of like they're a quarterback away because they not lacking talent anywhere else. But there's certain games where against Ohio State or against Michigan, you have to ask your quarterback to make those plays. And they've been so handicapped at it that they haven't really, for the most part. You can't just hand the ball off to your running backs 30 times and think Ohio State and Michigan won't bite on that and be like, if we don't have to play against these wide receivers, then, if we don't have to guard these wide receivers, we don't have to guard the outside, we could stack 8 in the box. I just think these have been the 2 best teams in college football, bro.
I don't think people appreciate how hard it is to hold any college football team to 75 yards in one game. and
No,
for over 4 quarters.
and I know they'll say it's Iowa, who we know has been handicapped.
I don't care if it was the school of.
Really
I don't
good
care if
defense.
it was the school of. I don't care if it was the school of blind and deaf, where they couldn't even get play calls in. Like people don't understand like how hard that is. I don't care who's playing offense. Like, and they gave up like 25 yards on the first drive. So like from that point forward, they allowed like 50 yards for the rest of the game. That basically means Iowa didn't cross midfield. Like that's legitimately mind-boggling to me to play defensively that well over the course of a game. Like it's insane to me. Like and
I just
so
think Washington been so impressive offensively, bro. Like they've been the
they're
best
just
in the country. They got 3 wide receivers that could go in. I mean, they got 3 wide receivers that these dudes is absolutely amazing. Their numbers is amazing. Like, bro, they got talent on the offensive side, and I know. Like, okay, their defense, they do give up some points, but they do it in a different fashion than like USC. Like, I know we say that they score a bunch of points, but like USC, but Washington also they didn't shut out somebody, but they beat the brakes. Like, what you've never looked at a Washington game and felt like they played with their food. There's not a game where they could have lost. There's not a game that was too close. They 10 against Tulsa, 19 against Boise State, 7 against Michigan State. Okay, they slip up and win a 59-32 game against Cal. All right, I can see where your concern about them defensively is. But at the same time, like up to this point, they've dominated. They've won in dominating fashion. And when you score 59 points and score so quickly, eventually your defense is going to get tired. They're going to give up plays. And when you know you're that much better than the team, Michael Penix chasing something. That offense is chasing something. When your offense is that good, what are you chasing defensively? Like, yeah, 59-0.
People should have taken the hint when Washington's offensive coordinator turned down the Bama job last year.
Yeah, like he knew he had something special going on this year.
They should have taken a hint when
you're on defense and you're sitting here and you're like, bro, my team gonna score 60. You know what? I could fall asleep against Cal. We let them score 32. We trust in our offense enough. We trust in us to step up in these big games that we got coming up against this competition. Hey, we had to slip up and allow Cal to score 32. Oh, there goes your wake-up call. We ain't going to do that again. Now it's time for our offense to continue to score 40+. And you know what? We'll start holding opponents back to less than 14 again. Let's get back to it until we play USC. And I really think that's what I think. I think Washington does play USC this year, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that has potential. I hope both of those teams walk into that game undefeated in this game of the year, especially because that means Washington will have already beat Oregon. I hope both of those teams walk into that game and be undefeated. I think you could watch one of the greatest games you've seen in the past few years. I think it could match like I think it could match like that Ohio State Georgia game you watched last year, 42-41 down to the wire. Somebody got to win, somebody got to lose. Like, I think this could be one of the best games played, especially because I'm an offensive guy, and I think that could be a high explosive 51-49 type of game. So I hope both of them are undefeated. Not to root against Oregon. I don't have a problem with Oregon. Now that I've stated that I think Washington and Penn State, I'm never root for Penn State. I just acknowledge how good they are, but they're going to lose Ohio State, and then we'll call it a day, and I have to backtrack one. But I can ride with the Washington and Michael Penix Jr. and think that they're the best team in the country. One of those two teams are those two teams are the two best teams in the country.
I understand why you have to pick Ohio State, but good luck with that one, Chief.
See, the thing is, when Ohio State play, I don't have betting interests. It's always personal interest. I'm rooting for my team to win. I'm not going to lose money.
I understand why you have to pick them, and I just best of luck on that one.
But you would be the same way with Ole Miss.
Oh,
but
for sure.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you gonna pick your team. You got to ride, and I don't bet. So I don't bet on Ohio State. There's going to be no interest for me to sit here and kind of question, I'll never take Penn State to cover. I'll never take Penn State money line. I'll never take Michigan to cover. I'll never take a money line. I just won't touch it. And I just I hope we win. And I'm rooting for us to win. And I'm going to say when we play Penn State coming up on that preview, we are winning that game. And I'm not going to feel any different unless we have a loss up to that point and I have to take my fan cap off. Realist, I'm gonna say Ohio State gonna win that game. I gotta feel that way. Until somebody beat us, we can't be beat. And I'm gonna always feel like that for Ohio State. I've been able to feel like that the past 2 years for basically 11 weeks. And nobody beat us, so I think it's gonna start now. Michigan's been able to be like, yeah, watch this, hold my beer. But yeah, I just kind of wanted to close on the fact that I guess to actually like have it on the podcast that I think those are the two best teams in the country. Argue with your mom. Not you, just anybody who think differently.
Yeah.
Argue with you. Because I got stats and facts and just expectations. Both teams have already, to me, exceeded expectations. They look a lot better than we thought they would look at this point. And they look like teams, I think they're in that national contender window. Like they're in that tier of who do you have as national contenders? I think there's about 6 or 7, and I think they're one of the 6 or 7. Both teams are one of the 6 or 7, and I like what I've seen from both of them over any other team, especially because of expectations we laid on teams coming into the season. We did not lay Washington to look like this. We did not lay Penn State. Hey, they'll probably be pretty good. I know you were on the Penn State train prior to the season, but at the same time in the national spotlight, they weren't going to be as good as they played. You wouldn't, people wouldn't have predicted it. So now they're sitting here and I'm like, God, they look like both teams look untouchable right now. Like they look unstoppable, where it almost just looked like the only 2 teams that can stop them is one of them.
Yeah. I hear you.
But yeah, that's what I want to close out on. We appreciate everybody for tuning in. We appreciate everybody for listening. The audio will be out tomorrow as soon as I get off of work. I'm Mo. That's Walker, and we'll recap week 5. Hopefully, we find some time this week. We'll definitely recap week 5. Coming up. So enjoy your Friday night football. Enjoy your Saturday football, Saturday night football, and we will catch y'all later on another episode of Field Stormers.